I'm David Carr. I'm a writer and editor who works in the technology industry. I got into Toastmasters because I was giving conference presentations and sometimes things like webinars, and I wanted to be better at delivering that message. And I also do some web development because I worked in the technology industry. I was an internet journalist going back to Internet World in the 1990s, which is when the web was just starting to become a commercial phenomenon, Web Week and Internet World. And I've sort of gone back and forth between covering the technology industry and working in it. Right now I'm doing more ghostwriting for technology executives and things like that, more on the marketing side. But just to give you a little bit of context, I'm going to take you through sort of my history in doing stuff on the web. So I have this plugin called Rsvp Maker for WordPress, and I work with WordPress because it gives me a nice basis for any kind of application that's involved with publishing content to the web, and then you can add on to it. So I have a plugin called Rsvp Maker that anybody can get for free off the WordPress.org site. It's also what's called open source software. So that means anybody can actually take the code and modify it themselves. And if they're nice and they produce something that would be like a generally useful improvement, they can contribute back into the main code that's available to everybody. And WordPress itself runs on that same principle. There's a marketing website for this that shows some examples. And so when you registered for this event, you went through Rsvp Maker. So when I became VP of Education for Club Awesome in Coral Springs, Florida, a number of years ago, I inherited a free Toast Club website, and my reaction to it was, do I have to use this thing? Because I wanted to promote my club in ways that I felt were not easy to do within sort of the limited framework that they gave you for doing web publishing. And so the members of the club agreed that we'd try it, what the heck. And I used Rsvp Maker as the scheduling mechanism, and then on top of that, built a layer of agenda management, which is what I want to focus on talking about today, because that's my own unique code. Again, it's an open source project. Other developers could contribute to it. Very few have, unfortunately. So it is mostly a one-man show. But I originally created it as a one-off hack for my own club website. And then when other people were interested in getting access, I created what I call the WordPress for Toastmasters project. So this is the documentation and sort of publicity site for what I've created. And then because Toastmasters Club leaders might be interested in using this, but not necessarily have the technical skills or ambitions to set up an independent website and install all sorts of plugins and softwares and configure it just right, I started this Toastmasters.org service, which is where you can go sign up to get a club website. And I take care of a lot of sort of the back-end server administration stuff. You can just manage your own club website.
So is this, not to interrupt Dave, but just
Sure.
thinking more broadly. So I'm a new club, and like you were when you started this, saying, we have for free from Toastmasters, free Toast host, but I'd like what David's doing. Can I try that, and how much is it going to cost? So is the Toastmasters.org running on the web structure that Toastmasters gives you, or is this completely different?
No,
and
it is
how much is it going to cost?
okay. It is completely different. Yeah, I'm trying to breeze past that part. So I originally tried to make it a free service, and I was going to get advertisers or sponsors. I have not gotten, no sugar daddy has come along to be the generous sponsor to underwrite all the expenses, and that there are expenses associated with operating this. So what I do now is I allow people to come in. They can create a site that is free for 6 months, and after 6 months, if they find it to be useful and productive and they like it, it's $30 per year. Now, I am not making money, or at that point, I should really do the calculations to figure out whether I'm losing money or how much money I am losing.
You're losing.
At some point, I may need to make an adjustment. But I'm trying to. I am competing with something that is free. I'm trying to get some money to offset my costs. But it is what I'm using here is a version of WordPress called WordPress Multi-Site that allows me to administer a whole network of club websites on a common foundation. So if something needs to be upgraded, I upgrade it for everybody at once. So it is less work than if I was maintaining, dozens of separate websites. But unfortunately, it is not free. But there is still the option. The software is free, but if you, like Larry, I believe, is running an independent WordPress site, and he is maybe experimenting with some of this software, or he's coming here to check it out to see whether it will be worth experimenting with more of it. So that is available for anybody who has the technical skills. But obviously, setting up your own independent hosting costs money too. It would cost quite a bit more than $30 per year. All right. So I wanted to mention that when I started the Online Presenters Toastmasters Club, which is a club that meets online and is devoted to online presentation skills, I set it up on Toastmasters rather than an independent site, partly so that I would have some experience working on kind of a level playing field, a somewhat level playing field with the other people who are on that platform, and could continue to improve it. The other reason this is worth mentioning, of course, a lot of clubs that never intended to be online clubs are online clubs at the moment, or at least hybrid clubs. And so as a result of working with this online club, I developed some things that were specifically for operating in the online format that are relevant and useful. So the main thing I wanted to talk about today was how you manage an agenda in this environment. And it is something that people do seem to be confused about. And so I am doing my best to try and make it simpler and to explain the things that you do need to understand along the way. So that's what I'm trying to do today. So this is my demo site. And if I log in here as a member, I can take a role. I can make myself Toastmaster of the day. Or if I'm on the phone with somebody or on an email conversation with somebody and they say, yes, I can be your vote counter, well, I can plug them into the agenda. They're not available to come in and do it themselves. So there's this edit button under each of these things that I can use to assign something or reassign something. So this is a meeting that is set up to be an hour Toastmasters meeting with 3 speakers and 3 evaluators. Pretty standard Toastmasters format, plus time for table topics. And if I look at this agenda, what I can see here is that one of my speakers, Teddy Roosevelt, is actually signed up to give a longer speech on trust busting. He's going to give a 15-minute speech. And normally we allow up to 23 minutes total speaking time. So I got a 15-minute speech, and I've got a 7-minute speech that's actually 22 minutes, and my limit is supposed to be 23. And I've got another speaking slot open. So if somebody signs up for that, then our meeting's going to run over time, right? If nothing else changes. So I want to talk to you about how I can go about changing that. And again, I'm trying to make this easier. I'm trying to make it so that not only the webmaster or maybe the VP of Education has website editing rights, they could go in and make these changes. But if I'm Toastmaster of the day, maybe the VP of Education is out of town or unavailable, I can make these changes myself.
So our meeting is all planned out to go from 6:30 straight through to 7:30 as a regular meeting. The one issue that we have is that we have a speaker who's signed up to give a longer speech. So even though only 2 people are signed up, we actually have 22 minutes of time booked. So there are a couple of ways we could deal with that. There are a couple of ways we could deal with that. We could say, fine, we're going to allow the person to have their longer speech, but that means we're only going to have 2 speakers for those 22 minutes. That means we only need 2 evaluators. And so now actually our meeting is more or less on time, actually a little bit early. And so we can allow a little extra time for table topics. And again, it's not that we think that everything is going to run precisely to the minute, but we're trying to have a good, reasonable plan within which we can make adjustments as we need to. So now we've altered our agenda, and that would be one way of doing it. Now, the other solution is to say, no, we really want 3 speakers to be able to speak, and that means that we really need, 29, 30 minutes on the agenda for speeches. And this padding time here is something that you can use also to allow time for speakers to sign up for speaking roles. And then the padding time is for transitions between speeches, for introductions, for the logistics, so setting up slides or whatever. So that's an optional factor that you could put in to allow an extra minute for that. And so that means we do need 3 evaluators. So that takes some time also. And so we need to cut other places. So we're running a bit over. One thing we might do, we could dial back the Topics Master, the portion where the Topics Master introduces the table topics participants, or we could actually just remove that entirely from the agenda. And now we can maybe give a little bit of extra time for the president to wrap up the meeting. All right, so we've timed it out, and we could make those adjustments. So once we've decided what we want to do, we can update this, and when it gives us a confirmation, it'll tell us we can go see the agenda. And so this version of the agenda still has 3 speaking slots. 1 is still currently open, 3 evaluator slots, and no table topics. Now let me show you another scenario that might come up fairly often. So suppose that your division director drops in and wants to give 10 minutes on the state of the district and preview of the upcoming district conference. So we have this welcome and agenda block at the start of the meeting, and right now that is empty. We can put in a description of what that activity is going to be. I'm just going to copy and paste something in here. And so we're going to dial this up. We can either use the up and down arrows, or we can just change this to 15. So we usually have 5 minutes for the preliminaries. Now we're going to have 15 for something a little bit more extensive. And again, we need to figure out where we're going to save time on our agenda elsewhere. Maybe we decide we can only have 2 speakers for this meeting because the person who's coming in to give the district presentation is effectively another speaker. And again, maybe we give the president a few more minutes at the end to wrap up. So these are a few different ways that you can achieve flexibility in your agenda. Now, if you want to make deeper changes, if you want to change the way your regular meetings work, then typically you would have to have editing rights on the site. So that's usually your webmaster, your VP of education, your president could go in. Whoever is a good, responsible member of the club and is tech savvy, willing to help out, go ahead and give them editing rights on the site. And so then they would see this option to edit the event. Your Toastmaster of the day who doesn't have any editing rights wouldn't even see that link offered to them. But from here, we can go in and we can make more detailed changes. For example, we might decide to move Topics Master, the table topics portion, to the end of the meeting so that can be available. But if other parts of the meeting run over, we can move things around. Before I get too much deeper into that, I want to cover some concepts about how both the agenda is constructed and how WordPress posts and pages in general are constructed.
One concept here is that we have one document and we have different views of it, so that we're trying to have the data flow smoothly between these different views. So we have the public view or the not logged in view, where we can basically see what's going on, but we can't sign up for anything. Then we log in and we get those controls to take a role or to edit a role. This is the printable view. So the standard printable agenda has a sidebar on the left where you can have information like the names of club officers, maybe a teaser about an upcoming district conference, something like that. And that can be modified as well. And then there's this email it out to the members view, where you go to agenda, and under that, one of the choices is email. And so I would send this out with a note saying we have 3 open roles that need to be filled. Please sign up for one of them. There's some other ways of driving people to the agenda, but it's a good one. If you can get people to pay attention to their email, it's a good one. You can also set up automated reminders. So this is a reminder that I was set up to give an evaluation yesterday. If I wasn't signed up for anything, I would still get a reminder message saying, we have a meeting tomorrow. Here's the agenda so far. Here's the open roles. So another little nudge to try and get some people to come in and hopefully sign up. And then also the data that's captured through the agenda flows into a set of reports. So everybody can go in and actually look. Actually, Andy, could you mute for right now? I am hearing that fan noise again. So I can see my history of past speeches. The VP of Education can go in and get some tracking information out of here. To make it perfect, you need to go back and make corrections after the meeting, because some people maybe signed up for roles but didn't actually wind up filling those roles. They didn't show up or whatever. And there are other views of this data too. There's a tool that I use to send out video recordings after the meeting that also pulls in the names and the speech projects and the titles if they were entered on the agenda, and helps me send out those YouTube recordings. So now I'm going to take a moment and talk about blocks, this concept of blocks in WordPress, in the WordPress editor, which is something that I use for the basic foundational editing and setup of an agenda. So what I was showing you earlier was a quick way of making some adjustments, but the blocks are the way that WordPress pages are organized in the editor, the WordPress blog posts are organized in the editor, the editor, and it's also used for the agenda. Andy, you raise your hand?
Yes. Recently, this came up in one of my clubs at where they're using Free Toast Host, and I wasn't even aware of the capability. But if you go to level 4 in a lot of the projects, one of them is managing an online meeting. So that's essentially evaluating the Toastmaster of the day, and you have an evaluation that's not during the meeting, but it's offline. But you have to know that there's an evaluator and assign the evaluator. In Free Toast Host, there's a way of adding that for any role, which sort of like dates back to when we had the competent leadership manual.
Oh, I see.
And
Okay.
people were able to evaluate different roles and how you're performing them. So this allows you to add underneath the Toastmaster of the Day that there's going to be an evaluation of the Toastmaster of the Day role. Is there a way of doing that within this program?
I think there might be. Let me maybe come back to that at the end, if you
Sure.
can remind me at the
didn't
end.
want to disrupt. I just wanted to ask the
Okay.
question.
All right. All right. So I wanted to cover this topic of blocks, and I want you to understand the basic concept of why the WordPress editor is organized the way it is, and how that applies to editing the basic agenda setup. Because normally what you do is you want to create a template for your standard weekly meeting, as standard as it may be. But the way that your meetings normally work, some clubs have like a couple of standard formats, and you can actually have multiple templates. But to try and have a standard model, and then you can vary within that. So I'll talk more about templates a little bit later. But first of all, you need to be able to edit these documents, and you may also want to edit it for a specific meeting. So these are the symbols for the different blocks that are available. Now on the left, you see blocks that are specific to the agenda setup, okay? So there's an agenda note, which I think of as being basic stage directions for how the meeting flows. You have the role, which is speaker, evaluator, and so forth. There's a sign-up form note, which is something that appears on the sign-up form, but not on the agenda. There's an editable note, which I'm going to talk about more. And I'll gloss over the last couple, but on the right, you can see basic built-in WordPress blocks. So the basic thing that you get if you start a new blog post and start typing, well, you're just creating paragraphs. But even within paragraphs, there are things that you can tweak, such as the font size. There's an image block, there's a heading block, there's an image gallery block, there's a list block, quote, so forth. So just to give you some examples, this is the interface for adding a block. So if you look on the left there, if you can see in light type, it says start writing, or type / to choose a block. So typing the / at the beginning of any line will give you choices. You can also click this plus button, which is always in the upper left-hand corner. And it also, it'll appear sort of hovering between blocks so that you can insert a block anywhere on the page. And on the right, you're actually seeing the type the / at the start of the line and start typing a keyword, and this will show you all the different agenda blocks. So a regular old paragraph, it has the little floating toolbar there is controls that are specific to a paragraph. So mark something bold, mark something italic, add a link. Over in the sidebar on the right, you see that you can change the default size. There's some color settings, so you could change the color of the text. If we go to a heading, then we have some similar controls, but it also allows you to decide, should this be a level 2 heading, a level 3 heading? So these are subheadings within your page that not only organize it visually and logically, but it's also a clue to the search engines about how this page is organized and what it's about. And then if we add an image, it gives us controls to say, should this be centered? Should it be full size? Should it be medium size? Should it just be a thumbnail? Should it be aligned to the right? So all these things are specific to different types of content. So I've extended that same principle to adding a role on the agenda. So first of all, you choose what role is it going to be. Is it going to be one of the standard roles, which will be on the drop-down list? Or you can also say custom role, and you put in, joke master or something that's not a standard Toastmasters role, but is something that your club routinely uses. And on the right for this one, you see count as 3. So that means we're going to show 3 different speaking slots on the agenda and on the sign-up form. So we see padding time allowed is 23. So 3 times 7 plus a little bit for the occasional longer speech. And padding time right here is 0. So that's just a discretionary thing if you think you need it to pad out your agenda a little bit. And then we have these couple of different types of notes. So on the bottom, you see a basic agenda note. So it's basically, it's a paragraph with some time attached to it, or the option to attach some time to it. It only appears on the agenda view. So it'll appear on the printable agenda. It'll appear on the email portion of the agenda. It won't show up on the front end. Because these are things that make sense in the context of the meeting. They don't make sense in the context of somebody signing up for a role necessarily. Now, the editable role, it's actually new in recent versions that you could have time associated with that. And that's where I was showing you that I was editing on the sign-up form and adding a description that said, our division director is going to come in and give a spiel. So that's also used for things like the theme and the word of the day, the change from week to week. So it's optional to have time associated with it, but it's one of the things that I've added to try and make it easier for somebody to work from the front end and make some tweaks to the agenda without necessarily going into the editor. They may not have security rights to get into the editor, and you don't necessarily want to give everybody in the club the right to edit your website because somebody might do it irresponsibly or just not be competent or trained to do it. So you want to keep a lid on some of those things. And then here I also wanted to talk about the template versus event concept. So if you're in the editor and you see on the right-hand side in the sidebar, if you see something like every Friday, you're working in a template because it's a schedule that this meeting recurs. It's more kind of abstracted as opposed to being a specific date. If you're working with the agenda for a specific date, then there's actually a little notice up top that I added. It says you're editing one event in a series defined by a template. If you're making changes that are only going to apply to this week's meeting, great, you're in the right place. On the other hand, if your intent is to make changes to every week's meeting, how we're going to organize every week's meeting, then you want to go over to the template and make your changes there. So those are the basic background concepts. So I'm going to show that again with an example on the demo site. Let's see. So here I am in an individual meeting, and I've decided that I want to change the organization Oh, I'm sorry. Wait a minute. I'm still sharing a blank screen, aren't I? I think.
No screen.
I'm not sharing anything.
Oh,
Okay. All right.
Gallery.
Let me come back here. Or, yeah. Okay. All right. So if I decide I want to change the way I organize every week's meeting, one way to get to that is to go to a specific week's meeting, and under Edit RSVP Event, one of the choices will be Edit Template. So that's one way to navigate to the template. So now, I could also go to Event Templates, and there's a listing of the different templates that have been set up. It shows that this is the one that's every weekday, every Wednesday at 6:30, and that the next event is April 21st. And if I want to edit the template, I can click here to get into that template document. So again, up top here is my editable note. Here's my general organization of the meeting. Here is a regular agenda note. And this little milestone block is just a placeholder for the end of the meeting, so that the end time will show up on the agenda. And then there's another editable note at the bottom for the theme and word of the day. So suppose I actually decide that I'm going to change from doing meetings that last an hour to meetings that last an hour and a half. So I'm going to give myself a little bit more maneuvering room on the agenda. Let's see. And I'm also going to change some of the organization here. I'm going to allow more time for table topics. And so now I've selected the topics master role, and let's see. Okay, there it is. And I'm going to increase the time allowed to this to 15 minutes. And I also want to add a role. So Toastmasters agenda role. And this is going to be humorous. And then in here, so I mentioned before that to find the insert, this little plus sign icon, if I kind of hover between two different blocks, that'll pop up. And I'll say here, I actually want to add note, Toastmasters agenda note. And this is going to be the 5-minute break. And in here too, there's a little projection of how much time is being consumed by my meeting. And there's also a link to this agenda time planner, because I think it may actually be easier to go out here and make updates in this view. If what I'm doing really is, I'm not going to add any more things to the agenda, but I do want to change some of the time that's allotted for them. So I said I wanted to make this a meeting that would go up to an hour and a half. So I'm actually going to have 4 speakers, 4 evaluators. So maybe we're doing this. Oop, we don't need 2 of them. Maybe we're doing this because members are telling us that they're not getting enough time to, oh, I didn't allow any time for the humorous. So let's give the humorous 5 minutes.
General evaluator has no time.
Is that right? You're right. Well, actually, so, you know, this is kind of a choice when you're organizing your agenda. Here, the general evaluator, when he's first introduced, he's introducing the other evaluators. So I don't have time associated with him here, but then I have a note saying that he asked for the reports of the from the other functionaries, and then gives his own evaluation. So he actually does need a little bit more time. That's correct. Yeah. And so yeah, let's actually give him. Let's see. How's that? Hey, now it's ending right at 8 o'clock. Again, assuming that everything goes perfectly. You know, we all know in Toastmasters that every meeting does not go perfectly, but still, if you go into it with a plan, you're more likely to have a good result. You know, and if you leave yourself a little bit of slack in the agenda too, to adjust when things go wrong, you'll be better off. So when I update this, so behind the scenes, this is actually updating that agenda document. So I could go back into the editing mode and make more changes if I needed to. So this comes back with the same prompts to view the agenda. It tells me I can go back and edit the event, but it also tells me, because I'm working with a template, that I can now go up, create and update new events based on this template. So I can take that standard model I have for my weekly meeting and I can modify it. So this is going to take me to this screen on the back end where it shows me the meetings that were previously created based on this template. And if I want to update them all, I can do check all. Now it's warning me that this one was modified independently of the template. So maybe this was a special meeting and I don't want to mess with it, so I could uncheck that one. But I'll update all the other ones. So, and I'll also add a couple for dates a little bit farther out.
What does detach do? I saw a box called detach that I didn't recognize.
Yeah, the idea there is that you could disassociate it from the template if you needed to, if you wanted to manage that one completely separately. One way of preventing it from being overwritten by these updates would be to detach it. So that is an available option.
Would that allow you to have a new template just for that meeting then?
Right. You could, yeah. You know, for example, for a contest, you know, you would set that up a little bit differently. And you know, out of the box, I do provide a kind of a boilerplate contest template that you can use as a starting point. Let's see. So if we go and view this, we should see that there is now a topics master, humorist, and 4 speaking slots plus a backup speaker slot. Let's say. All right, let me pause and take a breath, and also move into answer questions mode.
David, I have a question.
Sure.
When I send my agenda to Word, like, so I want to print it out in a Word document. When I send it over there, it goes into Words and it adds so many spaces in the sidebar between all of the officers, because I have the officer list there. It's just 3 or 4, 5, 6 spaces. It runs all into 2 pages, and I have to take time editing out all of the spaces so that I can. And then it also does that with the agenda part itself. It just adds all kinds of spaces between each item.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, that's something that I don't normally use that. I put it in there so that people would have the option of dumping the agenda out to Word and then being able to
like that. Okay.
Able to edit a little bit further in a familiar tool. Yeah, I do see that it's kind of spaced out. haven't looked at it in a while, to be honest with you.
Well, as long as it's normal, I guess that's fine. I just thought it would be something wrong with ours, but if that's just normal the way it does, then I'll just have to edit out everything.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, obviously, you could also go here and copy and paste if you want, and see if you get better results that way. But you know, I'm actually trying to make it so that you could just print it straight from the web browser and get a pretty good result. I think the you know, one annoying thing is that the browser adds a header and footer usually. Although you can, if you futz with your printer setups, you can take some of that out.
And one more thing with the editable notes. With editable notes, I put the theme in, and then I put another editable note for the word of the day. And it just repeats itself. If I put in the word of the day first, then it'll put in the word of the day, and it also put the word of the day in the theme part.
Is that I had there was a glitch a little while ago that I believe I've fixed.
Maybe I don't have an update, because it'll just repeat the word of the day in the themes.
Yeah, it shouldn't be doing that anymore. If it is, you know, follow up with me, I guess. And I'll take a look at it to see if something's going on there that I don't understand. But you know, for example, this is an editable note, and it's independent of the theme and word of the day. It should be here. So yeah, if that's still happening, let me know.
Okay.
Let's see. But yeah, I'm actually suggesting that you might want to use the editable notes in a few other spots. So in this this is actually the default template that somebody would get if they set up a website today. Would have the welcome and introductions editable note at the top. You might want to have one in the middle of your meeting that was something like club business. And maybe you only have a couple of minutes allocated to that most of the time, but occasionally you could change it to, you know, we're holding elections for a new board, you know, club board of directors, and you would allocate more time to that. And I am disappointed. I had worked on getting it so the these notes could also be edited from that time planner screen, because I'm trying to make it so that you can make all your adjustments in one spot. And I'm not sure. So that's supposed to be a link I can click on. I don't know why that's not working, but you know, I'll probably have it working tomorrow. You know, again, you know, this is a little bit too much of a one-man show right now, and so people do reach out to me periodically to ask me how to do things, and I'll explain it to them, and then I'll realize that actually it's not working the way, you know, the way I'm telling them it's supposed to. But a lot of the stuff works quite well these days, and there are some other things that we've built in, such as you can fill out an evaluation form online. I use that fairly regularly to send evaluations to people without them having to email PDFs back and forth, which I find awkward. You know, there are things for contests, particularly conducting contests online, that I built into the site, and I am certainly always working to try and make it better. Other questions, Larry?
Can individuals be given permission to edit certain pages? Or,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah. There is a hierarchy of rights that you can grant to people. So the standard WordPress editing scheme is you can be a subscriber, which is sort of the base level, means I don't have any special rights. You can be a contributor. A contributor can post items to the blog, but they have to be approved by somebody else and published by somebody else. You can be an author, which means you can post things to the blog without anybody else approving them first. And you can be an editor, which means you can not only publish, but you can edit other people's content. And you can edit the main pages of the website, not just content on the blog. And there is a similar scheme for Rsvp Maker. It basically follows the same rights and privileges that are associated with the being a if you can publish a blog, you can also publish an event. But there is also a status you can give somebody where they would be an Rsvp Maker author, but not necessarily an author of blog content, if you had a reason to do that.
well, the main thing is like the VP of PR,
Mhm.
if they want to edit the visitors page.
Yeah, I would
That-
probably make the VP of PR an editor and give them, so that would mean that they could edit any page on the site.
Yeah.
I think I think that's more of an interpersonal thing about how you work it out with them about, don't mess with this page or something. But I think your VP of PR should be somebody who is maybe working on polishing up the homepage as well as publishing things to the blog and so forth. There is also a security screen. If you go into settings for the settings for the Toastmasters extension, there are a bunch of different rights that you can assign to these different roles, and you can actually also do it for an individual user. So you could give an individual user certain rights. You can also tighten this up. Like some clubs might not want to allow regular members to be able to make edits on the agenda. And if they're not comfortable with that, there is a way of turning that off in here. But I'm sorry, you're asking another question, I think, or a follow-up.
Yeah, the problem I see is if someone has the ability to go in like you did on the agenda and everything,
Mhm.
they have rights to the whole website.
So yeah, it is possible to designate somebody as just just have editing rights to events. So I mean, I did this whole thing about the agenda time planner that I was showing you. So the screen on the front end where we can tweak the time, we can adjust the time, we can adjust the number of speakers. That was created partly so you wouldn't have to grant special editing rights to everybody who needed to make a sort of a minor routine tweak to the agenda. We're trying to make it easier to do that on a weekly basis.
So anybody can go in and change that agenda?
They can, yeah. Well, so all right. So my philosophy is more to be permissive until you decide you need to tighten things down on the management of the agenda, anyways, because I haven't really seen problems with it. Now, if you had club members who really we're going to go in and, take Joe out, edit the speaking role. Joe's signed up and they're going to put their name in instead. I mean, obviously that's not cool, but I don't find that is, has never been an issue with any club members that I've been involved in. I did want to show you that there is the option to assign somebody to be an Rsvp Maker editor.
Right.
And so that means that they can edit events, but they would not be able to edit your main web pages. So that is an available right. So and what I mean when I say edit here, I'm talking about edit the underlying document in terms of the WordPress security scheme.
Right.
The editing, let's see, what we're doing in the agenda time planner, I think of that as more making tweaks to the agenda as opposed to, making fundamental edits to it. So.
Right. My problem is I have someone that has no experience whatsoever in WordPress, HTML, or anything, has
Sure.
no understanding, and she wants to go in and change the visitors page, or she wants to change the home page. I mean, she could easily bring the whole website down. She knows nothing.
Well,
But you have to know something about WordPress and how it works to even allow somebody to be in there changing things in the blocks.
yeah, well, I don't know. So you would like to be able to grant her permission to edit just a single page?
Well, that's what she wants to do, yes.
I mean, yeah, I mean, my first answer would be that you make her an editor and you ask her to, could you please stick to editing just this one page until you're comfortable with it and you're confident. Maybe you can create a couple of blog posts, but I would handle it as an interpersonal thing rather than a technical thing.
Probably doesn't even know what a blog post is.
Well, I mean, I guess my thing is it is not that difficult. I've actually added complexity on top of it in terms of the agenda editor. I'm trying to make things simple. I wind up adding complexity, and there's a lot of options. Particularly if you're logged in as the administrator, there are a lot of options that people can get distracted by.
Mhm.
But just creating a blog post, I mean, it's a web-based word processor. Yeah, I mean, you do need to get familiar with, I think the block concept seems to be something that people get a little bit hung up on. But really, what you're trying to do is you're adding some text, and you want to add an image once in a while, and you want to add a link. I think that kind of stuff isn't that difficult to teach. And there is actually a Pathways project on, setting up a blog and posting several things to a blog.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
this is actually a useful skill that people could learn in the process of their role of being a Toastmasters officer, that they could then apply to a business website where they might also want to have blog posts where they're promoting new things that the company is doing.
Mm-hmm.
So
the blog is not a problem.
Yeah.
It's editing internal pages. That's
so there probably is a way. It's not something that I have an immediate answer to you for.
okay. That's okay.
I bet you that there is a plugin, but particularly since you're running your own website, I'm pretty sure there is a plugin out there that would enable that kind of functionality, because there is a plugin for just about anything that you might want to do.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't think about that. That's a good
there's
possibility.
probably like a selective editing
Right.
tool.
Right. I'll look into
Anyways.
that. Thanks.
Peter, you had, I know you had some specific concerns that I wanted to be able to address today. Has what I've shown you been helpful for? So Peter's in the situation of he inherited one of these sites. The person who did the initial setup is no longer part of the club, I guess.
That's
yeah. And so we had to do some detangling of administrative rights and things like that. And he was also running into a glitch where there was a template that wasn't behaving correctly, which I think we have under control now. But if you want to walk through how we might make some changes to your agenda, we could do that as part of this session. Or if you want to just go away, look at the replay of this and come back with more questions another day, that's fine too. What do you think?
The agenda issues in terms of setting up an agenda, I don't think I have a problem with that.
Okay, good.
For some reason or other, if I go and it's asked me to edit agenda, it tells me every agenda for every event. Sometimes it's hard to find because it puts agenda numbers and not dates on there. And you have to go back and find, and right now I've got the wrong one up there, but I'm going to put a new one out anyway. So I think I'm not as worried about that. The kinds of things we've had problems with is moving members around. You know, once you grant them administrative rights, we have trouble rescinding those rights unless we're like a super administrator. That was one issue. Yeah,
well, so there's sort of in the standard WordPress security scheme for a multi-site setup like I have. You know, I'm the super administrator. I probably need a backup person to function as a super administrator. I'm trying to recruit somebody like that. But then for, you know, each website can have administrators, but there was no scheme for administrators to be able to, I think, demote other administrators. So I did create this special category of the primary administrator is normally the person who set up the website. And the idea is that if the primary administrator leaves, they should pass the torch to somebody else. Yeah. But I think that that feature is a little bit too buried in the website. Maybe I need to make it apparent to people how they do that. I do encourage that everybody have more than one person who has administrative rights, so that you're not dependent on only one person can make changes. So you should try and spread that capability around a little bit. I think generally you want to have like a webmaster, the president, the VPE probably need to be able to go in there and make changes if they need to. And then maybe you have another person in the club who is enthusiastic about these things and wants to do it. I did do a whole thing because I'm the Toastmaster. I'm the treasurer at Online Presenters. I built a whole little dashboard just for tracking the dues coming in. So your treasurer might also want to have some privileges, administrative privileges, so that they can get to that screen.
Yeah, but our issue wasn't so much within the club. It's one thing as you rotate officers and so forth. It's another when they leave altogether. Right. And you can't rescind the rights that they have to the site.
Well, I mean, I don't think we're the only ones dealing with this. I guess Free Toast Host has a whole thing where you fill out a form and you put in a request, and I think they have some way of verifying with Toastmasters International that you're actually an authorized officer, and then they can grant you rights. So it's not a unique thing because obviously people do come and go in Toastmasters clubs. As I say, ideally they would pass the torch to somebody else.
That was a special case. In the general case, it'd be nice to be able to move members to our either inactive or former members list. And right now, to go to the former members list, I have to manually put the information in. It seems I can.
No, no. Actually, if you remove a member from your website,
yeah,
they. Let's see. Let me stop screen sharing. When you remove a member from your website, they go onto this list called the former members list. That happens automatically.
Okay.
So you can remove somebody. The idea is that we still have a little bit of information, and if they come back to the club, we could restore their active account.
Right.
So yeah, that is probably one of the more half-baked elements of the program. There was something there where you could log in information about guests, but I don't know if I probably should take that out because it's not really that useful. It's mostly there so that you can keep track of those former members.
And we do have members that maybe they want to take a summer off and then come back. So I can mark them inactive, but they want to get the emails in the meantime. They just, they're just saying they're overcommitted for the next 6 months, so they won't be coming to meetings. And
right.
Maybe they show up again and 6 months later and get restored. I mean, and then we have a lot of people sitting in this. All right, I'll come back when COVID's over and we're off the Zoom. I would say probably 70% of what we had last year, well, before this time last year.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, I guess I have had other people ask for some kind of inactive status. It's just a bunch of things would need to be reworked so I will take that under advisement. Yep.
That just reminds me, do you have a way to automatically assign people roles?
Yeah, let me show you how that works in this program. So I think this is a request that I get sometimes from people who are used to using EasySpeak.
Yep.
And I was never an EasySpeak user, so that's one challenge I have is I don't necessarily know how that's supposed to work. So there are two modes that you can use. There is this recommend mode, and it also shows up under agenda signups. There's recommend and then suggest assignments. They're slightly different. Okay, so this is a person who has an account on this site, and it shows up with their name in there, but it says suggested assignment unconfirmed. And I can add a personal note saying, you haven't done this in a while.
How did the person get assigned in there?
So what's going to happen is if I go through this form and I save it in that recommend mode, that person is going to get an email notification that says, David has recommended that you take the general evaluator role. Here's his note. You haven't done this in a while. And he can do sort of a one-click sign up to get on the agenda, assuming nobody else has taken the role in the meantime. So it doesn't automatically lock it up. There is also let's see, if I do suggest assignments, This does sort of the same thing. So it should show people. So it says suggested assignment unconfirmed again. And it's randomly picking people from the list, people who are in the member database who haven't filled this role in a while. Looks like this person has actually never done it. This person, Grover Cleveland, last filled the role back in January. It's time he tried general evaluator again. And so this is more, I'm just assigning you to this role. I'm not making a suggestion. I'm just plugging you in. So you can do that as well. Now, it's not the same workflow that is in EasySpeak. And, whether it should be, I guess, is a matter of opinion, but, you could try it out. But now we should have a completely filled agenda because they've actually been assigned to those roles. And they'll get a notification. David's assigned you to be general evaluator, and they could come in and take themselves off. But as of now, they're on the agenda for that role.
Can you do that in like 2 or 3 meetings ahead?
Let's see. So this is something that I have used quite a lot. Is there's this multi-week setup. This doesn't automatically plug anybody into the agenda, but it allows me to make assignments several weeks in advance. And I have used this where I'll actually pull this up on a screen, or I've actually done it from the lectern in front of an in-person club where I'm trying to fill the roles for next week. And it shows what is open, and I can choose anybody off the list, and it will assign them. And it also shows me down the bottom, here's a list of members who have no role for that meeting. So these are all the people who are fair game. There's one other thing I should show you that I use sometime. This is called the Agenda with Contacts view. So these are mostly fake people, but it shows who's on the agenda with their contact information. And here again is a list of members who don't have an assignment. So I know I need to fill 3 or 4 roles, and I can see that James Buchanan is open. I can call him up. I can send him an email. I can try and pester him. So this is a tool for the VP of Education who gets to, the day before the event and realizes they have a bunch of open roles that they need to fill. And sometimes people, there's the phenomenon where if you ask, can anybody do X for me next week? And nobody raises their hand. Whereas if you say, I think you would make a great Toastmaster of the day for next week. All right, I'll do it. There are ways like that I have tried to sort of work with the psychology of how people behave.
Is there a way to tell on that screen whether someone says, I'm not coming? So
yeah,
don't assign them?
Yeah, I don't think anybody shows up that way, but there is a button at the bottom of each agenda for planned absences. And if I click here, it will add me to the list. And so we often, let's see, if I look at online presenters, we'll probably see there might be 2 or 3 people who have already checked off that they're not going to be there for that particular meeting. I often see people fill it in and they expect to be away. So some of the features that are built around, nagging people to take roles, it doesn't show anybody for this particular meeting, I guess. But yeah, I try and avoid nagging people. Also with the automated reminders, if you checked off that you're not going to be there, then I'm not going to send you an automated reminder that you ought to be signing up for a role. So for example, my Friday morning club is set up so that on Wednesday morning, so 2 full days ahead of time, the agenda as of that point goes out. And again, those reminder messages show you if you're signed up for a role or if you're not signed up for a role. So Wednesday morning, it goes out, and then Thursday afternoon, so more like 12 hours before the meeting, a reminder goes out showing what the status of the meeting is. And, unfortunately, people are pretty good at ignoring email. I've been known to ignore email as well. So it helps, but it's definitely not a cure-all. So we have a WhatsApp group for a club, so we're often also posting there that we have 3 or 4 roles open that we need to fill, and we'll try and get people activated. When I was VP of the day, I always tried to make sure we didn't leave Friday's meeting without getting most of the important roles filled, but you can't always do it 100%. Anyway,
No.
do you have another question, Larry?
Well, I was going to say, and not only that, I don't like that method, because then if you have guests, you're up there front and say, okay, who wants to be the Toastmaster next week?
Yeah.
Anybody? That's just not good for the guests.
You do that at the end of the meeting. At the end of the meeting, after everything is done, there's a little space at the bottom for the president to speak or like close out.
Yeah, that's when they do it. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. There's trade-offs to everything, Larry.
Yeah.
But
I agree.
I mean, I hate when it's 2 days before the meeting and most of the roles are open. That's not cool at all. Part of it is about building a bigger, more active club and getting people to take more responsibility for planning ahead. But anyways, that's those are some of the trade-offs.
Club culture.
From the other
So some of that is not going to be solved by technology, most definitely.
From the other perspective, before I was any kind of an officer, I lucked or dumbed or whatever you want to call it into the planner. And I made the mistake the first time I was in there of clicking save changes, which signed me up for about 15 weeks worth of roles.
Oh, no.
Because every meeting that had been planned out there, it suggested a role for me. And by the save changes at the bottom, it plugged me in. Now I could change it later, but
well,
suggested members, if they don't want to think about what they want to do, go ahead and let it do that for them if they want to participate every week. A couple people did finally.
Okay. Let me just show what Peter is talking about, because I don't think a lot of people necessarily even know this is in here. But this is a view of upcoming meetings. And if I haven't taken a role, it will suggest one for me. And he was saying that he went down to the bottom and clicked Save All Updates, in which case it would sign me up for a role for every week from now until June, middle June, which maybe is a good thing. But even if you just wanted to plan a couple of weeks ahead, this lets me see what's open. I can see there's no speaking roles open, but I could be the watcher, which in our online club is the person who just keeps track of how you visually present yourself. So it's body language and everything else. And I can sign up to be evaluator here. So if you can get people to do this, this is actually a way of getting them to commit a few weeks in advance. And of course, I better put that back to none because I'm not going to go to the speechathon probably. So this is a way of getting people to plan ahead, and I think it is.
It's on the agenda edit page. I know for that.
Yeah. So you can go
Planner.
to. Oh yeah,
The-
planner is this thing at the end, right?
Yeah.
So that's another way of navigating from the individual agenda. So yeah, you know, they're navigating through these things is does have some complexities to it, but I mean, well, I'm trying to help.
Boy, you're doing well.
Yeah. No, I put a ridiculous amount of time into this, believe me, and a little bit of money too. So I thank you all for joining me here today. We're going to save this. We'll publish the replay. And if you have other questions that you'd like to follow up with me on, you know where to find me. Not that hard to find. Okay. So thanks for coming. All right,
One
Thanks for
last,
your time, David.
right.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
one last
Appreciate it.
thing. What's the name of the template that the generic template that you had? You have a reference to your site of generic templates, but what's the name of this one? The variable one.
Well, it's I mean, you know, I okay. Let me just let's go to your site for a second.
Okay.
So all of your templates are listed here, or should be listed here. Let's see, and for some reason you actually have two with the same name.
And, which I don't understand, but I think because we edited one that should have been a week.
Okay, well, why don't I delete this
Okay.
to sort of clean things up a little bit. What's going on there? Let's see, event templates. Okay, so this is your standard meeting template. And you've got a block at the top. You've got an editable note at the top for your meeting theme. And the variation that I've come out with just has an editable note also for the meeting opening. So
Okay.
So what you would do if you decide that would be useful to you, you would go to what note, editable note. Do you want me to put it in here just for now?
Sure.
So let's see, welcome and introductions. And the other new thing, and so that right now it has no time associated with it, but you could make it be 5 minutes by default. And as I was showing earlier, if you had a special activity like a visiting division director, you could add time associated with that. And then the only other thing that is different with the new kind of default agenda is, so you have speaker, evaluators, and then speaker at the end?
Well, this was back when I didn't quite know what I was doing, so I wanted to add a block for the district representative to install the new officers.
Okay.
So what I did was, not knowing what kind of, I put a second speaker block in, except that it made it a continuation of the other. I couldn't find a block that speaker block seemed to fit the best in terms of inserting a block at the time.
Okay. All right. So I'll suggest that we take that out.
Okay.
And then I'm just going to put in this milestone thing to be the meeting ends. Oh, let's see. So the meeting actually will. Oh, I didn't show how to move things. So that's another thing you might want to do is modifying your agenda, is there are these little up and down arrows.
Yeah.
Also, if you hover your mouse over here, you can drag and drop. So president wraps up the meeting. So yeah, this would be where the meeting actually ends. And
But I could also put in the business meeting there too, couldn't I?
right. If you wanted to have a placeholder for that. So this is what's supposed to happen when you save your agenda. So before it wasn't saving for me for whatever reason. And now it presents us with this option is what do we want to do with this agenda? And most of the time what you want to do, particularly for these meetings, is you're going to create and update events based on the new template. And this is what we showed before.
Event at same time.
So this is, oh, well, what is that? So
It
April.
looks like it got out of the edit mode.
All right.
Add update from template.
Yeah. So, well, this is what we would do. That is, I'm not quite sure why these are showing up as projected dates, because you already have things for that event. So things always go wrong during demos, unfortunately. So, but this should update your existing events. Again, you can go out and try and work with this. If you find it's not, if it's not quite working for your club, and you wanted to go back and make tweaks, you can go to edit template here and go through that process again. So I don't know. Hopefully that was helpful. And,
it's helpful. It's confusing. It's helpful. I'll get there.
Yeah, I mean, really, it's supposed to be. These are all the same basic elements, and we're just recombining them in different ways.
But that's the issue that I've had when you see screens like that where it says multiple meetings. Well, okay, how the heck did I get there? What the heck did I do? And I can't figure it out because I couldn't.
Well, just now, I couldn't figure it out either.
and you'll know, you got rid of my Wednesday meetings that seemed to have no template associated with them, but I couldn't delete them. They would pop up the next time I went back in.
Anyway, Andy, you had something?
Yeah, as we're looking forward, one of the things that I've noticed on some other websites where there's demos, and very often I've gone to a number of sessions where demos you start bogging down and losing the flow. And what they've done on those websites is they start off with a discussion like you did, but when it came to demos, they already had a done demo that they had, Zoom prepared and saved it as a clip. And then when they go to let's show this demo, and they go into a pre-done demo that was saved, so that they don't start floundering around. It's very
that's
tight.
Cheating, Andy. I do that too, but no. Sometimes if I have something that I want to show quickly, I'll record it ahead of time and then just sort of go through it quickly. But particularly for a small group like this, where I'm trying to answer questions, I want to be able to do some stuff live. And I actually want you to see that I'm a mere mortal.
Want to see how the sausage is made, right?
Right, and sometimes technology does not cooperate with me either. So the internet slowdowns, whatever's going on, or problems with my own code. But again, this is something that has worked well for a bunch of my clubs. It's working well, and hopefully will work better in the future for other clubs. And I hope you find value in it. All right, so I'm
Does
gonna wrap it up for today.
WordPress react well with a number of the translate programs, so that if somebody calls up and say, we are in a Spanish-only club, can you convert all this to Spanish? Does the Google's Translate and the other translating programs be able to go through all this and convert it to Spanish, for example?
Well, they should be able to. The WordPress core code is actually translated into a number of languages, so that the actual user interface can be displayed in Spanish or a number of other languages, a lot of other languages actually. The parts of Rsvp Maker have been translated. Nobody has done that with any of the Toastmasters specific stuff. So, you know, I don't speak Spanish, so I couldn't. I definitely couldn't do that. But some of the code is set up so that other people can come in and add their own translations, and that would be distributed through the WordPress repository. So there are a lot of things that can be done for translation. I don't have a lot of experience with them, but there are many possibilities out there.
Okay.
All right. I better wrap
Very
up.
much.
All right. We spent
Appreciate
an hour
it.
and a half on this. So thank you very much. Take care.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, David.